Hi, welcome to another session of Learning with ISRAR at ISRAR'S YouTube channel. Today our topic is framework agreements in procurement, in which we will discuss the concepts of framework agreements in procurement, why these agreements are called framework agreements, then setting up the frameworks agreement, its types, characteristics, and what are the best scenarios or situation where we will do the framework agreements, and finally the benefits of framework agreements. So now let's first define the framework agreements in procurement. These are long-term running agreements between a buyer and one or more suppliers that set out terms and conditions under which specific purchases or call-off orders can be made throughout the duration of the agreement. These agreements are commonly used when the exact quantity or the timing of the goods or services are not known upfront, but there is a recurring needs. Framework agreement is a contract form that only becomes significant when the parties make a transactions afterward. So, when entering into a framework agreement, we should also clarify what happens if there is no subsequent single agreements afterward. Otherwise, there is a risk of being perpetually bound by the agreement. So, to avoid the risk, we can write down that a framework agreement becomes invalid if it is not used within a certain period of time, or we can include a right of withdrawal for both parties. After discussing the concept of framework agreements and its legal uh, parameters, now let's see why they are called framework agreements. These agreements are called framework agreements because they establish a framework for the terms and the condition that will govern future contracts over a set period of time. Usually, there is no commitment from either party to specific quantities or delivery schedules upfront, but instead provide a overarching structure, that is framework, within which individual contracts or orders, also called call-off orders, can be made later. Now let's see how to set up a framework agreement. To establish a framework agreement, a organization will issue a contract notice indicating its needs. This is followed by the tender process, like regular tender process, where the terms are defined, including pricing and quantity requirements. After evaluations, successful suppliers are awarded a place on the framework. Then, over the time, specific contracts called call offs are tendered based on the initial framework terms agreed upon by the contracting authority and the suppliers. Now, let's talk about the types of framework agreements. There are generally two types of framework agreements used in procurement. The first one is the single supplier frameworks, and the second one is the multi suppliers frameworks. Single supplier frameworks consist of one contractor and are typically negotiated to leverage the best value through bulk buying. The other type is multi supplier suppliers frameworks, on in which we have introduced competition, allowing for a range of suppliers to be available for call offs. Dynamic purchasing system is another specialized type of multi-supplier framework that is more flexible and open to new suppliers throughout the terms of framework agreement. After explaining the types of framework agreements, now let's talk about the key characteristics of the framework agreements. So these are the main characteristics of framework agreements. There is the first one is no obligation to purchase, call off contracts, pre-agreed terms, duration, and multiple suppliers. So now let's discuss these one by one. The first one is no obligation to purchase. In this, the buyer is not obligated to purchase any goods or services under the agreement, but it ensures access to pre negotiated terms. Call off contracts. These are the specific purchases are made through call off orders, allowing flexibility as and when required. Pre-agreed terms, prices, delivery times and other conditions are fixed or set as a basis for negotiation within the agreement. Then duration, these agreements often span multiple years, providing stability for both buyers and suppliers. Multiple suppliers, it can include multiple suppliers, allowing for competition and flexibility depending on the availability and the specific needs. Now let's find out under what circumstances these agreements work best. These agreements are ideal where the exact scope of work or quantities may not be immediately clear, but the general terms such as pricing, quality, or service levels can be agreed upon. So now let's see what are the situations or what are the circumstances under those these framework agreements work best. So if it is a repetitive purchases, uncertain demand, we want to have multiple suppliers, then we want to have economy of scales, public sector procurement, long-term suppliers relationship, and if there is a complex and large scale projects, and finally risk of price changes and scarcity of goods. Now let's see what is the benefits of framework agreements. The top one is the cost saving. Negotiating terms in advance often leads to cost saving due to volume discounts. Then efficiency, it streamlines the procurement process by eliminating the need for repeated negotiations. Flexibility, it provides flexibility for buyers to adjust their order based on demand without being tied to specific quantities. The major benefit is suppliers relationship. So it builds long-term relationships with suppliers and fostering trust and cooperation. One of the very simple example of framework agreement is a public sector body may set up a framework agreement with several suppliers for office supplies. The agreement specifies pricing, delivery terms, and product categories. An organization can place orders as needed without going through a full procurement process each time. I hope after going through the presentation you have a basic idea about framework agreements, their setup, procedures, types, characteristics, best situations to apply these agreements, and finally its benefits. Please, if you have any question, write in the comment section and I will be glad to answer your question. Thanks for your time and listening. Till next presentation, take care and goodbye.